You could have everything handed to you, but unless you're willing to do the work and you have a good attitude, then it's not going to necessarily
It's
set
not
you
going to
up for
happen.
success.
I mean, I always say there's no shortcut to hard work. You
Yep.
cannot circumvent hard work. You're going to have to work hard, but you want to work hard in the right direction. Some say you have to choose between being the perfect professional woman or being the bad girl. But we're here to tell you you can be both. I'm Rachana Patel.
And I'm Ebony Lukovitz, and this is A Bad Girl's Guide to Business, a podcast for bad bitches who want to create lives they love and incredible businesses. Hi, baddies.
Hi, baddies.
Welcome back to episode 4 of A Bad Girl's Guide to Business. Today, we're going to be talking about how we came up with scalable and sustainable business models. And if you missed our other episodes, we give you an intro into our backstories, what led us to both start our companies. And also in episode 3, we shared the top lessons that we have learned in the last year in business. So today we're going to be getting into what really the first year of business looked like for us, and both confronting those really tough moments where we felt really stuck and we weren't even sure if we were going to be able to continue on this journey. We want you to know that it is overcomable. It is, what is the word? We want you to overcomable.
Yeah.
We want you to know that you can get past this period. It is normal, and it's all about just being resourceful and pivoting. So, Rach, I would love to get started with you, my dear, because we both confronted moments where we didn't know if we were going to continue with Zakari and Eden. And our roads out of that are similar, but also rather different. So
Absolutely.
why don't you tell us, how Zakari got started and
Mhm.
take us inside, that first few months and what led you to pivot?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ebbs. I was really looking forward to this episode because, as you said, the first year is typically the hardest, and everyone's feeling lots of feelings. There's no sustainability, there's no consistency. And these are all things that, first time business owners feel deeply. And I know I definitely did. So, for those of you that missed it in the first kind of couple of episodes, Ebony hired me, and she was my very, very first client. So she helped kind of kickstart my business in this way. She needed me to help her with sales for her PR business. From there, I was able to continuously land clients. And, fast forward one whole year after that, I had about 8 clients. That was wonderful, but it was a lot. Working 8 clients. I remember this so vividly because, for those of you that don't know, I live in Mexico City. My darling Ebbs lives in New York, but, clearly we remained very, very close. And so we'd have, our kind of bi-monthly little catch-up calls, video calls and stuff. And, you check in on me, right? And do you remember one of
Mhm.
the conversations that we had?
I mean, I remember that you were working so insanely hard.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you were logging on at 6 a.m. and were working until 1
Yeah.
a.m. It was insane. I don't know how you did it. And I was really worried about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I was working really, really long hours. Sometimes, I know that, I travel a lot. And so I'd be like planning a flight at like 6 a.m. or something, but I would just stay up the whole night and work because I was like, if I just don't get this done now, I'm not going to be able to go out and have my weekend away or anything. So I'm just going to stay up all night. And I remember you telling me, like, hey, like this really just isn't sustainable
Yeah.
and you're going to need to figure something out. And I'm like, no, I love it. Everything's great. Everything's fine. But you do get to that point of burnout, right?
Hmm.
Um, so eventually kind of what started to happen was, I'd book these clients and they'd be on for at least like a 6-month contract. But then they slowly started coming to the ends of their contracts. And that was like a moment of panic for me because I was like, God, what am I going to do now? They're coming to the end of their contracts. I'd have a few months where I'm generating really, really good money, you know, And then when they're coming to the ends of their contract, I'm worried and I'm panicking, like, God, what's going to happen now? So I started, having to think kind of creatively about, okay, how can I create sustainable, consistent growth and, make this business scalable? So I had to take a step back and think about things. But, it's probably important to actually mention, like, how did I even find these 8 clients first?
Yeah, how did you start? I mean, because I know that I was your
Yeah.
first client, but then
hmm
how did you get from 0 to 8 clients, which is incredible, by the way.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
what were the services that you were offering them?
Yeah. So, when I first started, obviously I started with you. And then I started telling people, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm offering sales and revenue consulting. I'm essentially going to help you make as much money as possible. Hire me. And they were like, how do you do that? I'm like, well,
Take my
I'm
money.
going to, yeah, I'm going to say, hey, you can work with me. I'll offer weekly consulting sessions with you. I'll go in and I will do, and this is really, really important. So I would tell them, hey, I'll help with your execution and your strategy. Execution is what's the most time consuming element of any business. So with you, it was beautiful because you really wanted to learn yourself and be able to run this on your own. Whereas what I started realizing when I got client 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they really needed someone to come in and do it for them from start to finish. And that's where it started to become unsustainable because there's only one of me. And I felt like I swapped one corporate job
Yeah.
for 8 full-time jobs. And that's when the light bulb really went off. Staying up all night, waking up early, working, having conversations with, my partner, Michael, him saying like, hey, I don't really know if you can do this sustainably.
Mm.
I'm very stubborn and I'm very hard-headed. And I was like, I can do it. And then you realize you can't.
You work harder than, and I've always said this, and I've said this several times in the last few episodes, but your work ethic is really remarkable. And I've not seen anyone, I've only met a few people who work as hard as you. Why didn't you just hire someone else to help you?
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And actually, someone else that I know that works as hard as me and who has the work ethic, grit, and determination is definitely you. That's why we get on. That's why we're doing this together because we see that in each other,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really remarkable, and I really appreciate that in you. Um, but why didn't I hire someone? Okay, these people were coming to work with me specifically for my knowledge, for my domain experience, for everything that I do. That's why they were coming. And I knew that, if I'm looking to scale, I need to figure out a way to work with many people, but working less hours more efficiently.
Mm.
So that started kind of like brewing in the back of my mind. Then I was like, I had Ebony, who was like my star client, my star pupil. I teach her, she does it. She's, nearly hitting a
Teacher's
million
pet.
in revenue. Absolutely. Nearly hitting a million in revenue by year 2. I was like, she listened and it's great and she knows exactly what she's doing. This is amazing. But there are some people who, like I said, need the hand holding. So I was like, really thinking to myself, okay, what similarities am I seeing over this year of, what things do people really need? And I very quickly noticed, because I have B2B experience, but I also have B2C experience from like a B2B kind of umbrella. But I recognize that B2B businesses and B2C businesses have somewhat similar needs, but also different needs.
And for our listeners who don't know, explain what is B2B and what is
Oh,
B2C.
yes. Actually, yeah. Great call out. So B2B is business to business and B2C is business to consumer. So your B2B businesses are Ebony, for example, running PR firms, any recruitment agencies, marketing agencies, um, that sort of thing. Those were all my
Mm.
kind of B2B clients. Now, my B2C clients, I work with jewelry brands, shoe manufacturers, water bottle companies. That's a business that's selling directly to consumers, right? So um, I realized that they have very different needs. So I started to think about what are the 12 key elements that I feel like a business that's a new business will need from start to finish. And I start putting together these modules. Now, some of you may be familiar with this and some of you may not be familiar with it, but it's called the cohort model. My partner Michael uses a cohort model. A lot of business coaches and people online use a cohort model. It's very well renowned. It's something I will say to you guys. I know in the last episode I listed out a whole load of books which I mentioned in the podcast, and they're also in the show notes. But you don't have to recreate the wheel. If something works and you know that's a tried and tested formula, feel free to take it and really make it your own. And so that's essentially what I did. And so I created the cohort model that allows me to work, 3 hours a week for my B2B clients and 3 hours per week for my B2C clients. That allows me to work with multiple people each month, giving less time, and it sets them up for success. So that was the model I kind of moved to. So I went from having 8 clients to now I have 4 clients. I'm making more money with less clients, and I'm giving less time for the new clients. Now, anyone new that comes to me, I put them straight into the cohort model, and they have, 3 different ways in which they can kind of work with me. Which is really exciting, and it makes it very accessible for people because working with me one-on-one is a premium price and not everyone can afford that. So putting them on the tiered level, it does allow them to access and learn and really generate revenue themselves.
How did you go from having 8 clients to 4 clients and making more money?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually a really important element to share. So remember earlier I said, some of the clients were coming to the end of their contracts, right? So that was a kind of scary, shaky moment for me. But I knew that I had to let go of those clients and allow them to come to the end of their contracts without trying to kind of renew them or renegotiate with them or carry on working with them on an execution basis because it was taking up too much time. Then I started kind of thinking to myself, okay, if I'm giving so much time to these certain set of clients and I'm really building their businesses from start to finish, and yes, they're paying my fee, I'm really an integral part to this business. And I started thinking about, how does anyone else really scale? You invest equity, you get equity shares in a company. And so I started thinking about that. And that was just kind of, in the back of my mind. This is when I had kind of gone down from 8 clients to 4 clients. I started thinking about equity sharing and kind of being part of something that just isn't mine. And lo and behold, the week after, 2 of my clients offered me equity share in their companies. I was
Wow.
blown away. I was blown away too. Yeah. One's a B2C firm and one's a B2B firm. So I was allowed to diversify my portfolio. They offered it to me. They offered it to me the week after I had been thinking about it. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. I had probably written about it in my journal. I was like, okay, cool. It'd be really nice. I've got 100% in Zakari Consulting. It'd be really cool if I could have, 20, 25% in one company, 20, 25% in another. I continue investing in them, like all of my resources and my time. They continue to pay me a fee, but, we have an exit strategy with them. We want to sell one of the businesses after X amount of years. The other business, we want to increase our lines of business. So we want to expand. And so they require very, very different skills. A B2B business requires very different skills to a B2C business. And so I feel truly blessed and honored that that is what has been offered to me literally the week before I was thinking about it. So that was the way. Thank you. Yeah. So that was the way to do it. And it really gave me affirmation that my thinking of having equity share in a company and taking part in that would be the way to go about it.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions for you, and I think it's amazing that your clients are now giving you equity in their companies, because if the companies do succeed, then the payoff and the financial reward that you will see is exponentially greater than whatever retainer you're charging. So that's amazing. And I think it's such a great way to build long-term like wealth for yourself, and you're almost acting as an investor in a way, which is great. And I think a lot of women are scared to do that. A lot of women in business, I see a lot more men giving, angel, like they're angel investors, or they will willingly invest and get involved in companies in exchange for equity. So I love that you're doing that. I have a couple of questions. I think the first one is, why did your clients offer this to you? How did this conversation come up? And then the second question is, what did those conversations look like? Just for for the baddies who are listening, who may be interested in doing some sort of equity share with their clients as well. What does that process look like, and how can they protect themselves? What should they look out for in these negotiations?
Yeah, great. Another great question. So, I would say it's a lengthy process, and it's a process that requires a lot of trust and open, direct communication. I think that you have to be in integrity the whole time. I think, the reason why it was offered to me is because they truly trust me and they know I have their best interest at heart. I'm not some sort of money grabbing gross, like, hey, I'll do this for you if you give me this. I genuinely want to help my clients. And that's really rules 101 of sales. You have to honestly want to help someone and think about what are they going to get out of it more than I'm going to get. Like, one of my mantras that I read before I go to bed every night is that I want my clients, whatever money they spend with me, I want them to make tenfold that money.
That's
I want to
amazing.
make sure they're doing amazingly well. And that's what matters to me. So I think that they really felt that. And so my B2B client, he was like, I can't do this without you. And, if you want to go far, you go, wait, what's the saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And he was like, I want to go with you. Yeah, I want to go with you.
I want to go with Raj.
And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so, it takes a lot of conversations. And my client, who is in the kind of B2B space, is a phenomenal networker. He's just got this amazing just charisma and charm about him, and knows a lot of people. And so we've been able to have great conversations with people who have sold companies for 60 million, 80 million, and they'll just kind of have a half an hour chat with us every week and give us ideas about scaling the business and then eventually selling it. So it's just about really talking to people and kind of figuring that out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then with the B2C business, again, something similar to that, she was like, I don't care whether I have 50%, 70%, 99%. Like, it doesn't matter to me at the end of the day, as long as I can make money from this. Like, I want everyone on my table to win. And that's what's really important to me. And you've been integral to all of this. So, I would love to kind of bring you in and give you a piece of the pie. And I was honored again. And it was really, really kind. And so we're still in the early stages. We're still finalizing things. It's not like, hey, I need it by this date and it has to be like this. It's just, it will all be finalized as it does. And, it's all very exciting.
I also really love that you are working with people who see your value and want to give you a piece of the pie, because I think there is no greater sign of trust and recognizing someone's value. As we'll get into a little bit later on in the episode, I gave away 50% of my company within, the first year, which was a very big decision for me, but it was one I felt really good about. And this is, like I said earlier, a really phenomenal way to, on some winning bets, create wonderful income and prosperity for yourself. So I love that you're doing this. I love that you're working less for less people and are feeling more rewarded and respected in the process, and also can see how you're setting yourself up long term for a really great financial future.
Oh,
And
thank
I love the
you.
idea of you as an investor and having
Yes.
a part in all these companies. I think that's so awesome, and I really would love to see more women do this.
I hope that
So
this
yeah,
I hope that this kind of inspires women to think creatively because I didn't have 100 million in the bank to be like, oh well, yeah, I like this one, and so I'm going to invest 2 million with you, I'm going to invest 5 million with you. I just have my my knowledge, my domain experience to give them, and that was enough for them to offer it to me even without asking. Now, like you said, it's an honor that they trust me and they want to do this with me, but I also have to trust them, right? Because
yeah,
there are clients that I've had that paid me really well and it was amazing, but their work ethic or their product isn't something that I could really back. Even if they were like, hey, we're going to give you 95% of the company, I'd be like, okay, but thank you. But no, it's okay. These are two companies that I truly believe in as well. Now, do I think it's
hmm
going to be an overnight success and happen within 1 year? No, we're really building, and it's allowing me to, because I've got my cohort model, it's allowing me to give more time to these other two businesses, right? So it's like, I'm still working long hours, but I'm doing different things, right? Because now with Zakari, I can be very efficient with my time. I can put people in at 3 different tiers. Therefore, like I said, it's really accessible for them. And then those people who want to pay me, pay me the higher prices, those are the people who I will work with one on one. And it's like, well, if you're going to work with me one on one, it's either you're paying me a lot of money or you're giving me equity. That's the only way I'm going to be kind of working with you. So you kind of have like for my cohort, you have the kind of tier 3, which is, really, really low barrier to entry. You just get a recording every month. It's like a self-learning kind of opportunity. For tier 2, you also get the recording, but you get to work, with me for, 2 hours per month. You get access to 2 office hours per month. And then the kind of tier 1 is the premium where, they attend the session live or also be available, recorded to them. And they get to meet with me 3 times a week. So we get to workshop a lot of things and we get to move very, very quickly. But the brilliant thing about this, that I thought of is I'm only going to record this content once, right? So when I'm doing
hmm
the live modules, I'm recording it once. I record this content live and then it becomes available for the tier 2 and the tier 3. So once it's done, it's done. And I can work with 20, 40, 50 people a month. And it's just a machine that just goes. So
hmm
that then
passive
allows
income,
me,
baby.
yep. So then that allows me then to give a lot more time to growing the other two businesses. This way, when people come in for Zakari, they are directly working with me, and that's exactly what they get. And then, I hope my plan is to be able to kind of acquire 2 companies per year, and have equity share in them. Yeah.
Ooh,
So that's the plan.
chills.
Yeah, very
I
exciting.
love that. Um, and what is bringing, if I can ask, what is,
Mhm.
because I feel like the baddies are going to want to know, what is bringing in money for you right now? Is it the equity and revenue share of the companies that you are a co-owner of, or is it the cohort model? How exactly does that look for you right now, nearly 2 years in?
So the cohort model is actually very, very new. I only started the cohort model maybe like 3 months ago, and I have a few people in there now already, which is great. So I know it's working. Interestingly enough, I have got more people in the B2C cohort than I have for the B2B. And I always thought it'd be the other way around. But
Hmm.
the B2B people tend to want to work with me one on one. So that's been very eye opening, very, very, new news to me. With my equity shares that I have in those companies, I'm not generating profit through the equity just yet because those companies are still very, very green, very, very new. I know it will happen down the road, but they do pay me a monthly fee
hmm
as they had been in the beginning. So I make money 50-50 between the both of them. Eventually, I do think that my cohort model will be, as I get more people coming through on that, that's definitely going to be my money maker and that's going to feel great. Um, but that's where I'm at right now as I've just entered, my second year into the business. Zakari's birthday was August 16th.
Oh my
She
God,
just
I
turned
missed
1.
Sakari's birthday.
She's a Leo. Yeah, she gives Leo
Of
energy.
course.
Yeah. Um so so yeah, I mean, happy first birthday was kind of this August, and now I'm basically just kind of 3 months, August, 2 months into year 2, and
Oh,
a lot has changed already. So yeah,
baby, that's so exciting.
I
Wow.
know. I know. It's great.
I'm really proud of you, especially since I know that when you were working so hard and you had these 8 clients and you were working like a dog and we were all so worried about you and you were so burnt out. I know that your faith was tested, and I know that the cushy world of corporate was calling you, and
Oh, she was
I
screaming at me. Come
her
home.
the siren song
Yeah.
of B2B sales was screaming out your name, and
Yeah.
you resisted and you pivoted and you found
Mm-hmm.
a way through. And I'm really proud of you. And I'm
I did.
sure as we sit here and talk today, if I say to you, what would the alternate reality be of you never having continued with Zakari? You probably wouldn't even want to imagine that.
Oh,
So yeah.
it's like you would just leave your child out. Like I would never do that, you know? I would
Um,
never do that.
and I just want to say, if any of our beautiful baddies are interested in working with you, then we are going to have a link to Rach's cohorts in the show notes.
Oh,
As
yeah.
the very first client of Zakari, I can really say that everything that I learned from Rach in terms of selling, having those conversations, which can be really intimidating, they don't need to be. And as women, we really we need to know how to negotiate for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so I cannot recommend this enough. If this is something you feel like you're a little bit weak on, I'm not just saying this because I'm Rach's friend. I'm saying this because I really do believe in what she does, and it has personally helped me scale my business to nearly $1 million in revenue. So that's my little plug for
Thank
Zakari.
you. Oh, I
So
appreciate that.
of course,
Thank
no,
you.
truly. So let's jump, I guess, to the takeaways, because there's
Yeah.
so much that can be learned from your story. So, what tips and advice would you love to
Mhm.
leave our listeners with from your story and your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I think my top 3 takeaways are, don't feel scared to put yourself out there. You really have to think about, who needs your service. Don't text them, call them. I have had people who are, really close friends. I'm like, hey, I just launched this cohort. I think it'd be really great. If you know anyone, blah, blah, blah. And they'll halt the message. They'll be like, yeah, sure. I'll give it a think. But if you go out of your way and you call someone and you say, hey, I'm doing this, who do you know? This is, I'm launching a fall cohort or I'm launching a winter cohort. There's limited seats. This is what I really have coming up. Do you want to join or do you know anyone? People
Are
will
you
be
in or
put
are
on
you
the
out?
line. Exactly. You figure it out there and then. Don't text them, call them. And then also kind of dive straight into the business. I didn't know how my business would be scalable. A couple of my friends were like, oh, cool, you're going to do this. How are you going to scale it? In the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm just going to have more clients. I'll get more clients, more clients, more clients. And then it got to a point where I was like, oh, dear God, I can't deal with any more clients. Like, I don't have space in my book of business to take any more clients. But feeling stretched will lead to innovation. And you have to stretch yourself. That is the only way you are going to learn your boundaries and how creative you really can be. And then my third is, think about scalable models. Pick the best part of what everyone is doing. Like I said, read the business books, see what people are doing with cohorts, and take it and make it your own. Cohorts maybe don't work for everyone, but they worked for me, and they will continue to work for me because that's what my business model is kind of based on. But I know for you, Ebbs, and I'm sure we'll talk about this when you were thinking about scaling, is the cohort model didn't necessarily work for you. So
No.
you have to try and test things.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me for this first part of this little questionnaire that we did. This was great.
It is interesting because I also looked at the cohort model in my moment of Eden in its current state is not
Mhm.
working. And I decided that it didn't really spark joy for me. And I guess we will dive into Eden, which I've also just
Yes,
realized.
please.
Yes. It's so funny. I also just realized that our daughter and my business are both going to be Capricorns. Now, I don't know exactly what that means.
Oh, how
but
interesting.
I know. And your boyfriend Michael is also a Capricorn.
He is. And you know what? I have a soft spot for Capricorns.
They're
Some
very
people,
strong. I
they're
think they
very
know what they
strong.
want.
Yeah, they know exactly what they want. They have a lot of structure. And I, who am crazy, am drawn to it. Because I'm like, structure, find me, please. And so it's great for me.
Yeah. Does this date have an agenda?
Exactly. And, I don't show up anywhere without an agenda. So
We
that's where I
don't.
really learned it from. We don't.
You don't. You don't.
No. So wait,
Don't.
so Ebbs, take us back
Yes.
right to the beginning. So Eden is a Capricorn.
Eden is
Our
a
baby girl
Capricorn.
that's going to be born later this year, she's also going to be a Capricorn. So
Yes.
okay.
So I am the mother of Eden Communications, which is one of New York City's fastest growing public relations agencies. And I get such a kick every time I say that. It's unreal.
You should.
But it wasn't always this way, baby. So for our baddies who are just joining us, you can go back to episode 1 of the show where I share my story. And I was laid off from my job as the head of communications for a tech company in January last year. Specifically, when we were in Bali for your boyfriend Michael's 40th birthday. Great juicy story. Listen to episode 1. Highly recommend it. And I basically had to figure out what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to have my own PR agency. And so, like you said, I started telling everyone. I put an announcement on LinkedIn, on my Twitter, telling people that I was building Eden and I was willing to talk with anyone who needed my help and my services. My background is in journalism and in communications, strategic communications. And I've been lucky enough to work doing comms and PR and visibility strategies, crisis communication strategies for billion-dollar companies, for some of the biggest companies in the world. Examples include Match Group. You may be familiar with that dating app Match. Turns out they're, a billion-dollar company. So I had the pleasure of working with really exciting startups, tech companies, and billion-dollar brands. So I knew I was capable of doing that. And I really love sinking my teeth into a challenge. So I launched Eden, and a couple of weeks later, I was very, very lucky. I had my first client sign. It was a referral that came through a friend. And my very first client was Hank Rogers, who is the co-founder of the video game Tetris, actually. And so
that's pretty cool.
I know my very first
Yeah.
client was the guy who invented Tetris. Larger than life, wonderful man, has committed his fortune to solving climate change after a near-death experience. So I really kicked things off in a very beautiful way. And after only a couple of weeks of launching Eden, I had my very first client who agreed to sign with me on a 6-month retainer for a few $1,000s a month. Perfect. I had rent covered. How amazing. What happened from there was I kept signing solopreneurs, individuals who were not household names, who were really looking for, someone to promote their book or to raise their brand or their profile. And I was working really hard for these unknown names and individuals, really trying to break them out and turn them out into household names. And it was a lot of work and it was very, very difficult. It is exceptionally difficult to take someone who you've never heard of and who has done some pretty cool things, but convince a reporter from CNBC or a journalist at Forbes to write about them. And as there are less and less reporters in the world, that is becoming increasingly difficult. I'm a very mission and value driven person, and that's why I got into journalism. It was very important for me to work with people who I believed in, who I wanted to help. And I know that you're the same way. And I know that a lot of our baddies can probably relate to that. You want to go to bed at night knowing that you worked on something that was going to help people that you really believed in. What happened though was I had put myself in a position where I wasn't necessarily set up for success. My second client was an author who found me through my Twitter account. He, was not really known at all. He'd self-published a book and he wanted to become a household name, a motivational speaker. And he had a really phenomenal story. He'd spent some time in prison as a young man, and it turned his life around. He also learned the art of sales and was, building up various businesses for himself. But it was very difficult. And so I managed to get him on a couple of podcasts. But I think I didn't communicate to him that it is actually very difficult to get media coverage, especially if you are not attached to a startup or a really fast growing brand, or are just starting out on your journey and have a very small footprint. It is very difficult. And so I kept attracting these solopreneurs and people who, as individuals, couldn't really afford my services, but really wanted them. And I found myself reaching out to dozens and dozens of journalists, pitching them to hundreds of podcasts, and maybe getting one or two people to respond. So I love the freedom of working for myself and helping people. But I realized that I was in this situation where people would sign with me for a few months. I would work my ass off to try to get them coverage, and they would not feel like they were getting value for money, and they would churn. And this was really hard for me because I knew what I could do. I'd seen myself do it before, but there was a disconnect there between my product and who I was selling to. And that was really, really difficult because I felt like success was almost in a way out of my hands. And this is something that I've learned, especially as a service provider. The people that you agree to work with really determine how successful you're going to be. So at the start, when you are in survival mode and you're trying to put food on the table and make sure that you can cover your rent, I totally understand going for the first person who says, yes, I will pay you to help me. But at some point, you're going to get trapped in a cycle where you're saying yes to everyone, and you are not necessarily setting yourself up for success. And I realized that I was saying yes to everyone. I was starting to get this customer type. I was starting to pigeonhole myself, and I was getting stuck with people who were churning, who couldn't afford me, and I wasn't feeling a lot of joy from the experience. And so I was still trying to make this business model work where I was helping founders, solopreneurs, small business owners on a local level. And I know other agencies that do this, and they do this well, and they work with, hundreds of smaller entrepreneurs, and they make it work because they have scale. But it was just little old me working for Eden, and I was feeling very stuck and trapped. And it was around 7 or 8 months in, and I had a bunch of clients churn. I wasn't getting them the results that they wanted or I wanted. And I was reading a lot of books on how to sell and looking at this cohort model, right? Thinking, okay, maybe I create a program where I'm teaching people how to do their own PR. I'm coming up with webinars and ebooks and guides and creating a program that people funnel through themselves. And I can get a lot of people in there, and I teach them, and maybe like you, babe, like have a different kind of pricing model. And I spent so much time creating an ebook for my website, a free guide
I
on how to
remember
do your
that.
own PR. Yeah, I put so
And it
much
was
work into
great.
that. It was really great. And it just wasn't turning me on. It wasn't exciting me. It just didn't feel right. And I wanted so much more. I wanted to be working with, these big, exciting startups, these billion-dollar brands. I wasn't really feeling lit up by this idea of working with like solopreneurs and small business owners. And, like it just wasn't really
It's really
inspiring me
hard.
or doing it for me. It's really
Yeah.
hard.
It's
And
really hard. And I think something that's really important to note here, though, is like, it doesn't mean that, you know, this podcast, so many people who are solopreneurs are going to be listening to it, brand new entrepreneurs. It doesn't
Mhm,
mean that, there's no space for entrepreneurs or solopreneurs to kind of succeed. It's just, you have to follow where the money is. And that's what's
mhm.
really important. And so you can't feel
100%.
guilty for doing that, because there's so many people. I mean, one of my clients, he was like, oh, I'm just working with new entrepreneurs, but now is working with entrepreneurs who are making between 10 and 50K per month, because they are the ones who can afford his product. And that's
Exactly.
okay to say it. It doesn't mean, I don't want to help people. It's like you have to follow where the money is for your growth and what lights you up. And I'm so proud of you for doing that because it's scary to
Thank
make that
you.
leap.
Yeah, it is scary. And I realized that I was charging a premium service and targeting people who couldn't afford it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you really cannot be a problem in search of a solution. You really do
Hmm.
need to have a look at who you're servicing, who can afford your services. And reducing your prices isn't necessarily the answer, right? I could have
Hmm.
done a cohort program. There are many people out there who teach people how to do their own PR. I'm
Hmm.
blanking on the name now, but if anyone is interested in this, we'll put it in the show notes.
Hmm.
And I want to share all of my PR and communications knowledge in this show. And like you're going to teach the baddies sales, I'm going to teach
Hmm.
the baddies how to promote themselves, how to do their own PR. We're going to do that in future episodes. So if you're interested, you should subscribe. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be hands on. I wanted to work with companies that were growing who could afford my services that I could get, really involved in and excited about. So I was, 8 months into Eden and was really stuck and thinking about this cohort model. And I was still trying to make ends meet and still, oh my God, I've got $30 in my bank account. This feels hopeless. Having a lot of imposter syndrome too, because I thought the issue was me, but really there was just a disconnect between who my customers were and who I was trying to sell to. And $3,000 a month as a retainer for a PR agency may not sound like that not it may not sound like that much money, but if you're a solopreneur and you're also barely making ends meet yourself, you're not going to spend $3,000 a month on a publicist. That's insane. So
Right.
I mean that's more than what people pay for their rent. So it just wasn't really working. So um by the grace of God, I decided to take myself off to a conference in around September of last year. And this is something that I really encourage people to do, which is never stop learning and putting yourself in spaces where you have an opportunity to learn and meet exciting people and grow your network. And so even though I felt really down in the dumps and unsure of what to do next, I was going to as many talks and panels and conferences and events that I could, just to be in that energy of people who are building and creating really exciting things. And I may seem really outgoing, but I actually am a little bit shy. And so going to these things alone is difficult. So I went to this conference alone and I introduced myself to a woman who was there. And she ended up being the wife of the man who would become my business partner. My business partner and I haven't really publicly announced or talked about our relationship. So we will talk about that hopefully in future episodes. But for right now, I'm just going to lay the scene in vague terms. But I was at this event and I introduced myself to my business partner's wife, who is an incredible woman who I admire and respect, and we have similar career paths. She was a journalist who has gone on to create her own media business. I introduced myself to her and I told her what I was doing. I said, I've just created a public relations agency. I was in media myself. And she said, my husband is actually looking for PR support. And she dragged me over to him, and he was surrounded by a throng of young entrepreneurs who wanted his attention. And she introduced myself to him, and he said, I would like to have a conversation with you. And we went out, we had a couple of meetings, went out for lunch, and he said, I think that you are a hustler. I really want to help you. I've been looking at getting involved in this myself, and I would like to team up and grow this business together. And he wanted to do a
Wow.
50, yeah, and he wanted to do a
Yeah.
50-50 split in the business. And I remember saying to myself, I'm going to have to give away half of my business, like half. And I felt so much like ownership of Eden. It was my baby. I'd been struggling. And I remember, babe, that, you know, we were talking about this. I was talking
Yeah.
about this with Michael,
Hmm.
and we weren't really sure if I should do this or not.
Yeah. I mean, because it feels because when you see your kind of best friend kind of go through this and everyone is
You
kind
guys
of
were
on that
rooting for me.
entrepreneur. Yeah, everyone's on that kind of entrepreneurial journey. You're like, wait a minute, what would this mean? What does this mean for her profits? What does this mean for Ebbs's, longevity? I know Adam had some thoughts, and then
Yeah.
Adam, your
Can we
husband, and then
trust
you
this
guys had,
person?
yeah, there's all of these things because at the end of the day, everyone is looking out for you. But I think what you did amazingly well was trust your gut and you looked
Mhm.
at the long-term opportunity and it definitely paid off.
Yes, it did. This is something that Alex and Layla Hamosi talk about, which is,
Hmm.
you know, you may not necessarily need a business partner. Like you need, if the opportunity, first of all, I had never sought a business partner at all. I wanted to do it all myself.
Hmm.
And I thought I could do it all myself. I really did not go to that conference that day looking for a business partner. And Alex and Layla Hamosi, who are two really incredible business owners, and they produce a lot of educational content. We talk about them a lot on the show. They answered this question for someone recently, and they said, unless your business partner offers something that you are lacking in, then you may not need a business partner unless this person has connections, resources, a platform that you don't have, then don't go into partnership with someone. For me, my business partner is someone who is one of the most phenomenal people I've ever met. His work ethic, I have never seen anything like it. He has incredible business instincts, connections, resources. And so, like we said earlier, you can go further together. And I knew that I would be able to learn so much from this man and that he would open up so many doors for me that it would have taken me so much longer to get there on my own. And so I saw that and we had many conversations and I decided to give away half of the business. And I'm really glad I did. And it's funny when when we set out to, create a Bad Girls Guide to Business, a few people, I think even my husband said to me, it's interesting that you guys are creating this when your businesses are so early on, right? You're not providing this super inspirational, here we are at the top of the mountain and you and I are gazillionaires, although I have no doubt one day we will be.
Oh yeah, I
But,
mean, that's a given.
that's a given.
Yeah.
But the whole point of A Bad Girl's Guide to Business is for Rach and I to really show you brick by brick how we are building our businesses. And
Yeah.
yeah, Eden is 3 years old and Zakari is 2 years old, and we're still in it figuring it out. But we want you to be able to learn and see what we're doing and have it be accessible for you. And it's really funny. Adam, my husband, was like, instead of the podcast, how I built this, it's how I am building this. And so this is how we are
I
building
love
this.
that.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and I think
Step by
sometimes you're
step.
at brick by brick, step by step. And
Hmm.
I think when you see someone's potential, someone doesn't have to come to a relationship with a huge amount of experience. Attitude is so important, and willingness to work hard and stay in the fight. And so my business partner saw how hard I have hustled and worked and my attitude, and that I came to this relationship with zero fucking entitlement whatsoever. And he recognized that in me and he decided to invest in me as an individual and as a human being. He didn't necessarily invest in Eden because, and by invest, I mean commit his resources and energy, because he does commit a lot of energy and time and attention to growing Eden alongside me. But he didn't invest in Eden. He invested in me. He believes in Ebony Lukovitz, the boss bitch, the savage who's going to get it fucking done, who's going to like do what is required and bust her ass to make this successful. He
I can
invested in
attest to
me.
that. Yes.
Yes, he didn't
I
invest
can
in
attest to
Eden
that.
because it's this $1 million, $1 billion PR agency. He invested in me. And so that is why he took a chance on me, because he met me and spoke to me and saw my potential. And so I just wanted to say that as well to the baddies, if they are listening and they're like, oh, I don't feel like I bring anything to a partnership or a relationship, you actually do, because having all the connections or all the resources behind you is wasted if you have a shitty fucking attitude or you're not willing to do the work, or if you're entitled. Everything, you could have everything handed to you, but unless you're willing to do the work and you have a good attitude, then it's not going to necessarily
It's not
set you
going to
up for
happen.
success.
I mean, I always say there's no shortcut to hard work. You cannot circumvent hard work. You're going to have to work hard, but you want to work hard in the right direction. And, to your point of kind of actually bringing on your business partner because you felt like you could learn a lot from him. He had resources and access that you wouldn't have, for another X amount of years. It's just sped up the process. I think
It
that's
has.
amazing. I think it's beautiful. When I think about Zakari, I'm like, okay, great. I have 100% ownership of Zakari, and this is the business model I'm going in. This is a way for me to be able to scale and help people is wonderful. That brings me a lot of joy. But when I think about the companies I'm going to continue to invest in, and like I said, my goal is 2 every year, I look at my B2B business partner and I think, wow, what a creative individual that has so many great worldly connections and really believes in his company. I also believe in his company. My B2C client slash business partner has 20 plus years of experience in the cosmetics industry and is absolutely phenomenal at what she does and what I can also learn from her versus what I can also bring. And so it's about, people are made to work and be successful in groups. So you don't have to go it alone. And I think that's something really beautiful.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. I'm really glad that I don't have to go it alone. And since we started working together, Eden has grown. I can't even tell you, like, we have gone from, maybe doing $100,000 revenue, if that, to closing in on $1 million of revenue. And, you know, like less than a year or a year of working together. It's unbelievable.
Incredible.
And I have learned so much from him and his work ethic, and he is mentoring me. And I just learned so much from him in terms of, sales conversations, pitching the media, hiring, managing people, making decisions. So I'm really, grateful and glad that I made that decision and took that leap of faith and gave away half of my business, because I know that I'm going to be so much more successful in a shorter amount of
Right.
time with him. And I'm working with companies that I want to work with. We just signed a client the other day. They're valued at $800 million. I'm back doing the work that I want to do, and I'm challenged. And every day I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose. Like today was one of those days,
I
but
know.
I'm learning a lot. And that isn't, that's an experience you can't put price on, just learning and growing and
Definitely.
developing as a human being. So I guess, to I never would have thought that I would be here, but it's so perfect and it's exactly where I'm meant to be. And it's very exciting to see Eden growing at the rate that it is, and to see me as an individual and as a founder and as a businesswoman growing at the rate that I am. I'm not just saying that because I am nearly 8 months pregnant and I am physically growing. Um, but yeah, I guess, I would say don't be afraid to pivot and be honest with yourself when it's not working. I think you did that when you had 8 clients and you were working a gazillion hours a day.
Yeah.
I was honest when I realized that working with these small ticket solopreneurs and founders was not lighting me up and also was not sustainable. And it's okay going with clients and customers who can pay you more premium.
Mhm.
That is okay. That's ultimately what we want. We want to charge more for our product and our services and continue charging more with time. We don't want to be negotiating against ourselves and selling our product for, bargain basement price, because you're going to do the same amount of work. But you're not going to be seeing the money and the financial reward that you need to. Another piece of advice I have is to, like I said earlier, go out there and put yourself in rooms with amazing people, go to conferences, network, meet people. It may feel weird. You may not introduce yourself to anyone, but I can guarantee you that you will learn something from whoever is speaking. Just go and put yourself in these spaces. And I'm an example of what could happen if you just, no agenda even, just go there
Just go
and
to
try to
expose
learn.
yourself. Yeah,
Just
I
go to
think those are
expose yourself.
I think
Yeah.
those are really important takeaways. And I mean, that's one of the main reasons why, I am leaving Mexico City next February because I recognize for my
Yay.
business, I need to be on the West Coast and I also need to be on the East Coast so I can be amongst people and peers. And not to say Mexico City doesn't have a great, amazing creative scene. It's wonderful, but I do recognize I need to be on the West Coast and on the East Coast and have more access to it rather than flying back every couple of months and going to this and coming back to this and going, you need that kind of sustainability in it. So going and having, exposure to physical events is really important. But
Hmm.
thank you for those takeaways. I think those three takeaways were really, really important. So kind of
Yeah.
getting started, doing it because, you have to try it all and you learn by trial and error. And I think that
100%.
that's really, really important to kind of share with everyone. Something I thought was really important that you shared was, Adam, your husband, was like, well, you guys are just kind of starting your businesses. Like we said, I've just started year two of my business. You're
Hmm.
just finishing
Just
year two of your
starting.
business.
Yeah.
Yes, about to start year three of your business. And it's, we're here to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, to start
Hmm.
everything from the ground up. There are so many people who run podcasts and share their stories, and they're already at the top. And I always think, you're always going to remember, of course, you're going to give, the stuff that kind of went wrong as well. But you're already so far at the top, making your millions and billions. You're really in that space. And so that's the success you're going to share. Whereas what we're showing you is how we're doing it step by step. So hopefully that will provide you the inspiration and guidance to take that leap of faith and do it yourself.
Beautifully said, Rach. And I think that is a perfect place to close episode 4. And I'm very excited for our next episode because we're going to have an incredible woman on the podcast who
Yes.
walks the walk and talks the talk. And she is going to teach us so much about how to overcome the shadow side of entrepreneurship. And like you said, those icky feelings that come up
Hmm.
when you're really doing the work and putting yourself out there. So if you haven't already, if you don't already identify as a baddie, as a bad bitch, as a member of our tribe, please subscribe to our podcast so you get a notification of every time that we publish. We are on Instagram at Bad Girls Guide to Business. So if you have any burning questions or anything you would like us to cover, please, please, please send us a comment or a DM there. I've already had a couple of girlfriends give us a few episode ideas. So we really want to hear your feedback. And we are just so happy and grateful to have you here with us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
we will see you in the next episode.
In the next episode with the interview with Emily Todd, like Eb said, she's phenomenal and it's going to be a great episode. See you then.
Amazing. Bye.
Bye.